Welcome to FUNC YOU UP, the podcast that gives you the best of functional medicine, nutrition, and wellness in 8 minutes or less.
Hi everyone, this is Michelle Miller, clinical nutritionist.
And this is Diana Orchant, functional medicine registered dietitian-to.
Welcome back to FUNC YOU UP. And today we're going to talk about one of our favorite ways to start the day out, those healthy smoothies, shakes, and what makes them healthy and what makes them maybe more like adult milkshakes.
So we have a few important elements that we always like to include in our morning protein shakes.
And these are kind of like the foundational, aspects of a shake that you always want to make sure are in there. Because here's the thing, right? If breakfast is the most important meal of the day, we don't want to have a bunch of sugar in there. I mean, what are a lot of the mistakes you see, Diana?
I think the most common things we see are people just loading way too much sugar, whether that be added sugars or adding just loads and loads of fruit in there, choosing kind of not so great protein powders or additives or supplements that maybe aren't necessarily the best. And then I'd say really just chugging their shakes so that they're gone in a minute and they're like, wait, what's for breakfast?
Yes, agreed. Like this is a lot of it's a lot of grams of protein in a lot of cases, and it can be a decent amount of calories. And also you can't just throw all that in your stomach and like hit the stomach with that at once. You know, you're going to be that guy walking around the gym or that gal walking around the gym with a lot of gas. So nobody wants to be that person. So we always kind of coach our clients on a handful of things when you're making a really nutritional dense smoothie. There's a couple of pitfalls, and then there's a couple of tips and tricks that we like to stick with. And this is really across the board, regardless of, are you trying to put on weight? Are you trying to do meal replacement? You're trying to have like a leaner, kind of more nutrient dense shake in the morning so that, you're having a healthier decision. That's kind of the beauty of it, right? It's like you can throw whatever you want in it based on your needs for the day. So let's talk about protein first, because that's one of our favorite categories.
So with protein, I think some of the biggest pitfalls we see are individuals choosing kind of these not so great proteins. Maybe they're walking into a convenience store and picking up the first thing they see on the shelf, maybe just because it has that beautiful label that attracts them. But we often see people picking up kind of like these not so great whey proteins, various soy protein isolates, which can be really inflammatory.
Yeah, really, really harsh on the gut in a lot of cases. Is it bad that I'm like trained myself at this point? If I see a label that has like metallic or like neon, I just it's probably not a good rule of thumb, but I like automatically think it's not a good product. But yeah, we're a big fan of like the pea protein, the hemp, I even love like some of the quinoa blends or some of the rice blends. So any of these plant proteins, I'm usually a big fan of. And again, knowing the company, if it's a shake you're going to be having on a day-to-day basis, you probably want to know where it's coming from and how it's being processed. Versus if it's like once in a while you're just stopping by your favorite, local juice smoothie place. I don't know how crazy we have to get about that, but something that's going into your system on an everyday basis, I would be asking questions like, where is it sourced from? Now, the next thing that we think about is kind of like these other fillers, right? And fruit is a big one we should talk about.
Absolutely. So when we think about a shake, I think a lot of times the first thing we think about is, all right, well, what are we going to put in it to make it taste good? And so I think we see a lot of mistakes being that people are piling so much fruit in there, or they're putting a lot of, even like I've seen dried fruit, or adding pure sugar, maple syrup, too much honey to get that taste, when in fact you can get it in more natural ways.
And I will say, fruit is our natural sugar source. So one of the rules we'll have with a lot of our clients are, really try to push yourself to find a recipe that has no more than 1 cup of fruit. Really try to push yourself to have a recipe that has no more than, if you're going to use banana, only use it like a half of a banana. We always love berries. We say berries are best because they're high in antioxidant function, but also lower on the sugar standpoint. But what would be other ways that people could sweeten up their shakes if they're already doing that?
I personally love to add a little bit of cinnamon. That can add a nice sweet flavor.
Great for your blood sugar too.
Absolutely. And we always say, you know, if fruit is your main sugar source, you're likely not going to be craving anything more. So that cup of fruit should be sweet enough. However, if you need a little bit more, that's where we recommend certain, like maybe a little drop or two of liquid stevia, liquid monk fruit, just to sweeten it up slightly. At least at the beginning, when you're slowly moving into making morning shakes.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're used to having like a Frappuccino or like a glass of orange juice in the morning, that's a high sugar content beverage. It's gonna be really hard to turn over to like a cup of berries. It's gonna feel really bland. So sometimes, as a way to counterbalance that, instead of trying to chase the sweets or like the sugar receptors, kind of like flip it completely, and maybe you try to add in some ginger instead, or some of the like a lemon or lime type flavor, because you're just gonna be stimulating different taste receptors, so that you're completely throwing you're not necessarily trying to taste sugar anymore. You kind of get a different sensation.
And even like nut butters, seed butters, that can often satiate you in that way as well, kind of make you crave less sweet.
I love that. So because you brought up that topic of the nut butters, let's dive into fat, because I think this is commonly overlooked when it comes to a lot of smoothies.
Absolutely. I think fat in general is completely overlooked.
Thank you.
Something that's so important. No, it's like so true. So a good way, especially if you don't think you're eating enough good, healthy fats, which are so important, putting them in your smoothies is a great way to incorporate them. So that could be putting in a fourth or a half an avocado in the morning, throwing in maybe some actual coconut, or if you can't get access to that, maybe a little bit of coconut flakes. Or you could do Mct oil, which is medium chain triglycerides, which is essentially a derivative of coconut oil, but a little bit easier to digest.
And there's so many different benefits, right? That's the cool thing about a shake or a smoothie, is that you can really design it based on what you're looking for. Some people who are looking for some of the brain enhancing benefits of the Mct oil would love that. We'll get into this topic in a little bit, but I always use some of my liquid omega-3s in my shakes. It has a little bit of a lemon taste, and it's a nice way to increase the fat that way. I've also had people who love to put like chia seeds or ground flax seeds in it, and then you're also boosting your fiber. So avocado, that's a nice one too, because that'll kind of smooth out or add like a nice thickness to the shakes. So there's so many ways you can kind of play around with this and perfect your own recipe too.
Another one, just to talk in general about adding things into your smoothies, is that we love to tell people to sneak in your veggies.
All right, so let's take a step back, because we don't all have a Vitamix, right? I mean, if you do, you have no excuses. You got to throw everything in the Vitamix. It'll just make it beautiful some way, somehow. But let's talk through some of our recommendations if someone's kind of new to adding vegetables to their shakes. Where do we have them start? What do we have them kind of experiment with first?
So the first thing that we always say is make sure you're counterbalancing with fruit the first time you're doing this, because otherwise it's going to be a pretty unpleasant experience.
Bitter.
Yeah. So, but if you're putting in, let's say, a little bit of banana, some blueberries, then you can definitely sneak in a little bit of spinach or kale. The only thing you'll notice likely is that the color is going to change. Other than that, you really shouldn't taste it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like one of my favorites is pairing apple with kale, or pairing spinach with mango.
You can also put in cauliflower, which will thicken it more. So if you find your smoothies are a little runny, you can throw in some cauliflower, it thickens it, and you absolutely can't taste that at all.
That's what I was going to say. If you're not feeling so brave, maybe try out that cauliflower, because you're so right. I didn't believe it. Zucchini, if you peel it and freeze it, I often find is similar to that. You don't really taste it. I would say cauliflower is a little bit better. And also now you can buy the riced cauliflower. So it's already like chopped up. You freeze that helps too. We didn't talk about this, but frozen fruits and vegetables tend to change the consistency of a smoothie too, make it a little bit frothier, which can be nice.
And also,
Yeah.
if you're worried, if you're sitting here and saying like, I cannot handle all those fruits and vegetables first thing in the morning, let alone at all in a shake, then we always say, if you have the time, maybe a little bit now in quarantine, to steam some of those vegetables and even some of that fruit if you want in advance, and then freeze it. That way it's going to be cooked and you'll be able to digest it a little better in the morning.
Great point. Yeah, cooking is definitely going to help, and it's another step to the process, but it really does make a difference. Now, what if you're someone that's like, you're hardly eating fruits or vegetables right now, you love the idea of the shake, but it's like, this is really ambitious, I'm not even buying vegetables at the store. What could somebody maybe just start out with?
I mean, personally, you could just start out with a nice protein powder and some nut milk, coconut milk, almond milk, and then slowly over time start to add in some fruit to sweeten it up, and then kind of add in the vegetables later.
And one of the recommendations you just gave a client recently was some of the different like greens powders.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Like putting in, you could use, there's Amazing Greens powder. I know Standard Process has some nice powders that are kind of these dehydrated vegetables that you really can't taste it, but it's a way to just throw it in. And that's also really good when you're traveling, but you want to make sure you're fitting the greens.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, especially traveling. Like, it's hard to find good, like, fresh fruit and vegetables when you're on the road like that. So, all right, now we have, some protein, we have fruit or vegetable, maybe we have a little bit of fat. I think fiber kind of comes into play with a lot of those things, whether it's seeds or if you're, some people add in a little bit of oats or, the vegetables you're having in there. So that's kind of cool. But talk to me about liquids. Like, where do we kind of stand with that? What are some of the mistakes we see people make? And then what do we tend to recommend?
I think the biggest mistake we see is people using way too high of way too much sugar in that base or way too much fat, meaning that
Yes.
we've seen people say, oh, I'm just putting in coconut milk. And we're like, oh, great, like the coconut milk that's in the carton. And in reality, they're using the coconut milk in the can, which is it's much higher than you'd ever expect calorically.
Yeah, it's probably the difference of like 60 or 90 calories to like 300 calories. So, that could be a recommendation if we were trying to put on weight for someone. But again, you just want to make sure you're kind of aware of what your goals are and what you're working with.
Absolutely. So I think we'd say look for almond milk, coconut milk, cashew milk, pea milk, hemp milk, all unsweetened, of course, and you can sweeten it with that fruit. But those are typically the bases that we would recommend.
So on that note, a couple things we get a lot of questions about juice and coconut water. So I mean, talk to me about kind of what you would recommend if somebody was saying like, oh, I make this shake every day and I put coconut water in it.
I think coconut water can be a good base. I just wouldn't use it as the entire base. So maybe I dilute some of it with either that nut milk or that water. But it is a good source of electrolytes. So maybe if you're using this shake after a workout, that's a great idea. But juice, I think we tend to stay away from unless it's like, a functional food, like a drop of tart cherry juice to stimulate your melatonin or something more unusual. I don't think we'd ever say like throw a glass of juice in here though.
Totally. Yeah. Dilute things. I think that's a really good recommendation. And then I will say in terms of, now there's like a milk for everything, right? There's like an oat milk, a hemp milk, a pea milk, every nut under the sun has a milk. And I think it is now important to start looking at the ingredient list of those and making sure that there's, things like it's free of the things like carrageenan. You're looking at, is it sweetened? What is it sweetened with? How many grams of sugar per serving? Because again, it's like you could think that you're doing so much to benefit your health, and then you realize you have a chocolate almond milk that has like 16 grams of sugar in it.
Absolutely. And I think we encourage people, we at least love when clients are saying that they're making their own nut milks.
Show-offs. More power to them. I don't do it, and I find it so charming. I think it's absolutely fantastic when people are doing that. Now, what are some bonus tips that we love about kind of other things we can add to our shakes?
So I think one of the things we always say is using our shake. We use our shake at least as a vehicle. So What does that mean? It means throwing in things that you would need to get in throughout the day, but don't know when to incorporate it or where else to put it. So you can kind of hide a lot of things in your shake. For example, I know that I take cod liver oil, so I might throw some of that, as Michelle was saying. I also love to have green tea in the morning. Sometimes I don't feel like making that cup and brewing it, so I just throw a scoop in my smoothie. But yeah, there's tons of things that you can throw in.
Yeah, I have clients that have like psyllium husk or different fiber powders that they like to add to their shake just because on their own they kind of taste gross. Lots of different powdered herbs can be used. A lot of adaptogen blends I've seen added in like that too. And then also, I mean, when you think about, magnesium powders, I've seen added to them before, different electrolyte blends. Again, it depends on the individual and what their goals are, but I've also seen can be really helpful for children who, maybe it's difficult to get certain nutrients or even certain supplements in. So, you make like a nice kind of peanut butter or almond butter smoothie. You put a little bit of banana, you put some cacao nibs in there and kind of make it like a fun experience. And then you throw in like a nutritional powder just to like increase the total nutrition needs. And I also think too, there's like, I had a client who couldn't swallow pills. And so we were trying to work with a lot of liquids, and she found like she could put her vitamin D dropper into her shake, or she had like a liquid multivitamin. She could put that into her shake too. And it's like one and done, right? It's like one less thing you have to worry about moving on to the rest of your day. All right. So now you have this beautiful shake. It's time to consume it. Take us home with our last recommendation.
Our last one is chew, don't chug. So I think this applies to so many different people, whether we hear all the time, I don't really love to have shakes because I like to chew my food, in which case we always recommend anyways to chew your shake. So that could mean chewing like your liquidy shake, or making your shake a little bit thicker by putting a little bit less liquid. So you could literally eat it with a spoon. And that way it initiates the digestive response, stimulates some of those digestive enzymes, and can often trick your brain that you're like actually eating it. For those who say, I really love to like sit down and eat something, it can kind of make you feel that you did.
Totally. I love the convenience of a shake. I just think like anything that can keep me moving, but also, provide good nutrition, I'm so in for that. But I want to make sure if I'm spending the time and the money on getting really good quality nutrients and ingredients into a shake, I better be absorbing as possible. So making sure that you're drinking it slowly, take your time, don't chug it, and chew. Like actually, it's really not that odd. I think the first time I thought, this is weird, but you kind of get into it and you just get used to it. But it really does, send a message to the brain. Oh, you're eating something. It's the same thing that happens when people are chewing gum. It stimulates the brain, and that's why some people get gassy because of that, because like nothing's actually getting digested. But with this, your shake will actually start to get digested, and that's exactly what you want. Get all of those good nutrients that you just put in effort to get into your shake. Make sure you're absorbing all those nutrients into your body.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll even take a spoon, dig in, eat it like ice cream. That's a good way to get kids to do it too.
That's one of my favorite like nighttime desserts, is to get like a really delicious chocolate protein powder. Make like a really thick shake, maybe sneak a full banana in there.
Whoa.
And then you got to try to make this like thick smoothie experience. I love it. So if you didn't hear one of your favorite additions, we want to hear from you. Please send us your ideas so we can share with our community anything that you just cannot live without it being in your shake. Send that over to us. And of course, if you feel like anyone would benefit from this episode or enjoy this episode, please feel free to share.
And you can reach us on our Instagram at Physio Logic NYC, or via email at funkyouup@physiologicnyc.com.
Thanks for sharing this with us. We'll see you soon.
See you next time.
You've been listening to Funk You Up. Be sure to like, review, and subscribe for more daily tips on living well.